I'm Sam.
And I'm Andrew.
And we're MB Board Gaming, and today we are taking a look at Orichalcum, which is published by Pandasaurus Games and designed by Bruno Cathala and Johannes Guppy. So Andrew is going to show us how to play, and then we'll be back for our final thoughts.
All right, so here I have a 4-player game of Orichalcum all set up. Which you can see most of everything. My player board here isn't as noticeable, but I want to be able to try to fit as much on the screen as I could. So in Orichalcum, what you're trying to do is you're trying to gain 5 victory points and make sure that there are no creatures on your player board. And the way you're going to be doing that is you are going to gain those victory points through building temples, gaining these medallions, and gaining the attention of a Titan, which at most you can ever have as 1, and these are temporary victory points. So they could potentially leave. So keeping that in mind, at the beginning of the game, every player is going to gain some resources. It could just be 1 hoplite and 1 Orichalcum, depending on turn order. Also, every player is going to gain 1 of these player boards, which are double-sided. You have an easier side with the 1 asterisk, and on the other side, it's going to have 2 asterisks, which is a little bit more difficult, and that's because you're going to see a lot more narrow passages, which I'll talk about why that's significant. So in the game, you're going to be playing until somebody wins, right? As soon as somebody gets those 5 victory points and they have no monsters on their board, they will immediately win the game. Now, depending on the number of players, each round is going to be broken into 4 or 5 phases. The 5th phase is only played with a 2-player game, where someone, because typically you're going to take 1 of these cards as your action, and in a 2-player game, you'll also, in the 5th round, you'll pick 1 to discard, right? So that's the only thing you have to really worry about. But for the most part, you're just going to be playing through 4 phases each round. And I'm going to go through those phases really quickly to show you how it's played. So on your turn, you have 2 mandatory things you have to do, 2 phases that are mandatory and 2 that are optional. The first phase is going to be selecting an action card. So up here, you have these different action cards. And depending on which one you want, some are free, like these first 2, while the others are going to cost you hoplites in order to take those action cards. And as you can see, each card is broken into 2 sides. You have a left side and a right side. The left side is going to be a terrain tile that you're going to be placing onto your map. And the right side is going to be the action that you're going to be taking. So if I wanted to take this card here, it would be free. If I wanted to take any of these here, I'd have to pay 1 or 2 hoplites. And the different actions that you're going to be taking are going to be producing Orichalcum, capturing creatures, recruiting hoplites, or constructing, which I'll go into in a second. So first, let's just say, for sake of the teach, I'm going to take this very first one. It's free. Now, this one has a monster on it here, and the way you're going to know which ones have monsters is whichever ones have volcanoes will immediately get a monster drawn from the creature bag, and you will take that. Now, when you first play, you're going to have 1 of these starting tiles. I'm trying to remember what they're called, but anyway, everybody's going to get 1 of these that you're going to place on 1 of the harbors that you're going to have on your board with these resources. So when you cover those up, you'll gain those resources, but any future tiles that you're going to place adjacent to a tile that you've already placed on the board. Now it has to obviously fill the circles. You can't have it hanging off the board. You can't overlap. Those kinds of typical placement rules that you might be used to from other tile placement games. So you're going to be placing these down, and you're going to be creating these little paths. If you ever cover up, I'll show you, if you ever cover up 1 of these other ports or harbors, you will then gain those resources as well. Okay, so you're going to be taking these and you're going to be placing them. And you're going to want to be placing them in certain ways because you could potentially attract the attention of a Titan. And the way you're going to do that is if you generate an area that is 3 or larger of a specific terrain type. So here, this Titan here wants 3 or more forests. Once you accomplish that, you will be able to take that attention of that Titan and place it at the top to show it's 1 of your victory points. You go from left to right. I just don't have the space over there. Okay? Now, you'll keep the creature the creature is going to stay on your board where that volcano is at until you capture it. And remember, you cannot have any creatures on your board in order to win the game. So even if you have 5 victory points, if you have creatures on your map, you do not win. You have to clear those out before you can to win the game. So you're going to place those. You'll keep your creatures on there, and you're going to be building up these different terrains. You're also going to be, just to kind of keep this in mind as you are playing through the game, you're going to be looking to potentially build temples. In order to build a temple, we'll talk about it in a second, but you're going to want spaces that have 4 different types of terrain, and the volcanoes are going to count as wilds. But I'll get into those, but that could be something you're going to want to consider when you're placing these tiles out onto your board. So I placed a tile, super easy part of the game. Then your second mandatory action is going to be to do the action that's on the card. And there are 4 different ones you're going to be doing. This one here on the card that I have taken is going to be producing an Orichalcum. So for each Orichalcum mine that I have on my board, I will gain 1 Orichalcum. Okay. And so I'll go through each of these 4 actions that you're going to be able to take and that you're going to be resolving. So this one, fairly simple. For every single mine, you gain an Orichalcum. Same thing here for these recruiting hoplites. You will receive 1 hoplite for every training camp that you have as well. And we'll talk a little bit about how those are going to be used in a minute. The next one that you're going to be doing is going to be, let's go ahead and do combat since I have a creature. So whenever you have a creature, or whenever you take this captured creature action, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking your hoplites and you're going to be assigning them to each creature, okay? And so let's say I want to start my battle here, and I only have 1 hoplite. This creature has a strength of 12. So I have to be able to roll dice in order to meet or exceed that number. And for every hoplite, I can assign between 0 and 3 hoplites to this fight, and that is going to add to the number of dice that I get to roll. So if I put 2 there, I will get 2 plus 1. So however many hoplites you have, add 1, and that's what you're going to get to roll. In this case, I only have 1 hoplite, so I only get 1 extra dice. So I get to roll 2 in total. I'll roll them. I'll add them up. 9, I failed. In that case, I immediately will stop my action. The hoplite that is there will stay there for any future creature, captured creature actions. Okay, so that's what's kind of nice, is that they're not lost. They're staying there and continuing the fight until you return to finish off that creature. Okay, now, if I had rolled 12 or higher, I would capture that creature, or if I happen to roll one of these skulls. This would also ultimately be like a one-shot, an automatic capture kind of thing. So you would take that creature, you would gain the loot that it has. This one in particular allows you to attract a Titan, which is really nice because that's a victory point. And you're going to put them in your little supply area down here on your board. Okay, so I'll show you that here really quick. So they're going to go down here once you capture them. Any hoplites that were used will be discarded and go back to the supply. And what's nice is if you have multiple creatures, let's say I did defeat this creature, I can then continue on to the next battle that I can have. So I can keep going so long as I keep winning and I keep having creatures to capture. If I run out of creatures, then that's going to end the action. If I lose, that's also going to end the action. So that's how that action is going to work. Now, the last action to talk about is going to be the construct action. And for that, you're going to be paying attention over here to this little building board. And you are going to be able to build one of the 4 available buildings. Okay. Now, each one of these has a specific terrain that it wants to be built on. So, and keep in mind, since I defeated that creature, this is now a wild. So I can use this as any terrain that I want and can build anything on it. Now, typically, if I had this creature still here, like I lost in the first time, I cannot build anything adjacent to a creature. So I would not be able to build here on this forest terrain because it is adjacent to the creature. Okay, so that's the only restriction really, is you cannot build adjacent to a creature, and you also have to build on a specific terrain type based on where it's at on this board. So if I want to build this Orichalcum mine, I have to place this on a mountain. Now I could put it on the volcano because it's a wild, but that's what you're going to be doing for these ones. Some will give you special powers, right? So this one lets you heal some hoplites to get those back when you fight. Others will give you Orichalcum when you do certain things. And then you'll also have these temples. Now these temples that you're going to be building have to cover up 4 different types of terrain, okay? It cannot cover up a building. You cannot cover up buildings. Once a terrain is covered up, it no longer counts as that terrain, okay? So even if I had like 3 forests, for example, let's say I had 3 forests. I'll take this for an example. And I built this building here, okay? I would still have this Titan from attracting it with the 3. However, now it doesn't count as a forest. So I'd still have to get back to 3 or, you know, in order to keep this Titan, okay? So the way with Titans, the way that works is going to be whenever you create a space that has 3 or more, or if you grow that space that's already at 3. Titans are, I will say, a one-time use. So once you use them, you'll flip them over until you grow that area, at what point it'll flip back over. Or if you attract a different Titan, this one will go back and you'll flip it back face up, okay? So that's the way that's going to work. But anyway, getting back to the temples, you're going to be covering up 4 different terrains, and volcanoes can count as different kinds of terrain. So if you happen to have 2 or 3 volcanoes, they can each count as a different terrain in order to meet the requirements for the temple. Once you build a temple, you'll gain one of these medallions. On the other side is the temple, and you'll be able to place it up here to track that victory point. Another thing that you can do as a part of your construction is you can spend 5 Orichalcum in order to gain a medallion. And when you do that, you'll be able to just put it up here and track that victory point. These are both permanent, not temporary like the Titans, okay? So that's what you're going to be doing on your constructing phase. Now, for the last phase, so you pick your action, you place your terrain, you resolve your action, and then you can do any additional. So over here on the side of your board, you have the option to take an additional action, but you do have to pay the price. So depending on the type of action you want to take, you have to pay to do that. I'm going to try not to, well, it's okay. That's fine. Let's just do this. Here, let's say I have a bunch of hoplites. I can spend 2 in order to take an additional capture creature, construct, or produce Orichalcum action. If I want to use this Orichalcum, I can do one of these 3 actions, or I can do any action if I spend 2 creatures, okay? So you're going to have the option to do that, to do 1 additional action. You'll spend those resources in order to take those actions. And that's pretty much it. After you're all done, you're going to slide everything down, refill it, and keep going. And then the first person to get those 5 victory points and have all the creatures cleared off their map is going to immediately win the game. And that's essentially what you're going to be doing. So let's go ahead, let's pop back up top, and we'll tell you what we think.
All right, and we are back. So thank you for that, Teach. And this is a game that you got for Christmas, right?
Yes, this is on my list because it is a Bruno Cathala game.
Of course.
So if you are unaware, I actually am a big fan of Bruno. He's one of my favorite designers. And obviously, also Johannes, I believe he's a French designer, and he's kind of up and coming, it seems like. Everything he's been a part of seems to be getting a lot of buzz. So I'm really interested in seeing, I was really interested to see how these 2 working together would come up with a game. And so this one is one that also thematically is really, really cool. You have these Roman or Greek gods, if I remember right. I believe it's Greek.
Yeah.
And so, and the tile placement was really enticing. So really kind of drew me in. I really like the artwork as well. And Pandasaurus has been one that I think in the last month or so, I've been enjoying more and more of their games that they've been coming out with recently. So I wanted to give this one a try.
Yeah.
So looking at this game, and let's just kind of jump right in and talking about this. First, we'll talk about the production of the game, right? So the production of the game is nice. I mean, you have nice tiles. Everything looks really good art-wise. There are bags that you can draw the monsters out of and draw the different tokens from the buildings and whatnot. And so I like that they have those bags in there. I like the player board. The player boards are nice and big. The cards are good quality. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty standard, I think. I shouldn't say standard because it is still a really nice game. Even like the iconography in the game, I feel is pretty easy to understand, like what the different symbols mean and what, you know, the different actions that you're taking on the cards are really easy to understand. And so, yeah, I really like that. I even think they did a really good job on the rule book for this game. Laid everything out very simply and easy to follow. They even have the nice little turn summary on the back of the page, which I really appreciate as well in case you need a quick reference, something really fast. So I really like that from a teaching standpoint. So production-wise, I think they did a really great job.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think the artwork is, I mean, like something that stood out for me. I mean, I'm always in games, I feel like that's what draws me in, is the artwork. But yeah, I thought it was cool. Like, it's just kind of like, not too serious of artwork. You know what I mean? Like, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a cartoonish, but like, I don't know. It was cool. And I like, it was like the bright colors, and the tiles are nice. Like, all the components are nice. I did like the fact that the iconography was like, you know, pretty big, like straightforward. So yeah, overall, like, I liked the production.
Yeah, and I think this is I mean, the art and everything goes, it's not meant to be a heavy game. It's a pretty low barrier to entry for this. It's a family weight game, I would say, would be my thoughts on it. So talking about that and getting into setup and teardown is pretty quick, right? You already have the monsters and the buildings and the little bags. You just get your player board. You're gonna pick which port you want to start at, get your starting pieces, and you're pretty much good to go after you put those cards out. And so with this game, being able to teach it, it's a pretty simple game, right? As far as rules and what we're going to be talking about, I mean, literally, you are deciding which card you want to take. You got to pay for it if you want to take one that's further down the line. You're going to take that, place the tile, and you're going to do the action on the card. That's pretty much it. You can spend your Orichalcum or your hoplites or these monsters in order to take an extra action, and that's it. That's your whole turn, pretty much, right? And so it's a pretty quick, easy thing to teach. There is some obviously rules when it comes to placing those tiles and how you place them and placing the buildings right. But again, those aren't very strenuous rules. The only thing that I think was maybe a little difficult was understanding, like, oh, you can only have one of those gods, you know, because when you get those larger majorities or those larger areas and you're swapping gods in between people, and you got to kind of swap ones in for another one out. And so that's the only thing that might be a little bit like people like, oh wait, I can't have more than one. I even did that. I was like, oh man, I wanted all these gods to get my 5 points and I didn't have them. So all in all, I think the teach is relatively simple, pretty easy to grasp, and then being able to set up and tear everything down is pretty quick and easy as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like setup and tear down was pretty easy. Learning wasn't difficult either.
Well, when you have a good teacher. I'm just kidding. Anyway. Talking about the gameplay mechanics, I really enjoyed what this brought to the table. So obviously you're buying from that display of cards. It gives you a very much almost like a Century Spice Road kind of feel, where you have the row of cards that you want to buy, and the further down, the more expensive they get. I mean, obviously you're not putting cubes down, but you have to spend those hoplites in order to get to a certain card that you want to take. And so that could depend if I want to take monsters, or if I want to be able to take a certain action, or be able to gain a certain tile, right? Maybe I don't want that 1 tile, I want this 3 tile, and making sure that it fits on my board, because those boards are asymmetrical. So if you play, all the player boards are double-sided, and some of them can be a little tough because they can have really narrow ravines. So if you're trying to build out a forest or whatever in order to get that god and trigger that ability, you got to be thinking kind of strategically ahead about what kind of tiles I want and need, and how I'm gonna be building, and where I'm gonna build those buildings, right? Because that's all gonna affect those gods that you're gonna be getting. So I really like that. I like how quick the turns are. Super quick, super simple turns, right? I already kind of went over it, and I did in the teach as well. It feels thematic, right? I guess, yeah, I would say it's thematic, right?
It definitely is. Like, it feels thematic. I mean, you're building out like your island, and you've got the different terrains, and you're fighting monsters and all of that, and you have your little hoplites, like your little warriors and stuff. So I felt that it was very thematic. Yeah.
And I liked in this game that combat, like the very first time I played it, I was like, oh man, I don't want to take a lot of monsters, because in order to win, you have to get 5 points, and you can't have any monsters on your thing. However, if you don't have a great attack, like if you're fighting monsters and you don't win or whatever on the first time, the first one or the second one, right? Your hoplites stay there to fight when you come back the next time. So you're not really punished if you have a bad roll or whatever it is in order to beat these monsters.
I like that too, because I feel like a lot of games, like if you do take on monsters, like it's like a big consequence if you can't beat them, and you're like, no, and it could like set you back a whole game, where I felt this didn't punish you that much.
And you can even chain a bunch of these, because you could fight a whole bunch of them at once, right? Like you could fight one, okay, I win this, I go over here, I fight that one, I win that. And so you want to me, I kind of want to get some of those monsters, because then I'm going to get the extra goodies for when I defeat them, and then I can spend them to take extra actions, which are nice as well. And so it's kind of like, ooh, I almost kind of want to go after these monsters, right? And those volcanoes are wild, and so that helps with your building of temples and everything in the game, which is really cool. I mean, the game is literally a race to 5 points. And so when you get a point, it's a big deal that you get that point, especially if it's on a temporary point. But you are definitely always keeping an eye on, okay, she has 3 points, he has 4 points, I need to make sure can I take this god away from them so they don't win? Managing those resources. Do I want to spend these to take extra actions, or do I want to spend 5 Orichalcum so I can get that medallion? And that's one of my points, right? Or building up those terrains. Do I want to go for the gods, or for a specific god, or am I trying to get the different types so that I can build that temple? Or what kind of buildings are out there? Maybe I can have multiple. Maybe I don't have to have 4 different types of terrain, right? And so that's my thought when it's a very simple, easy, quick game, but there are some meaty decisions to decide. How do I want to approach this? What is my game plan? Am I going to build an Orichalcum generating machine, right? To where I'm just going to buy a bunch of medallions, or,
the hoplites too. Like, I feel like there's so much replayability in this game, because the first time we played it versus like when we played it again, I don't know, like for me it was just completely different. We played it a couple times, but it just felt different, and I had like maybe a different strategy every time I played it. But like the hoplites are so, like, they're super important. The Orichalcum super important, and like so you do have to make that decision of like, how do I want to do this?
And so, there is obviously some luck of the tiles and whatnot, and when you're fighting the monsters. But all in all, it's a pretty quick game. It plays in 45 minutes, so it's not like you have a huge time investment in it.
Right.
And there's ways for you to obviously mitigate that with the hoplites that you put out when you're fighting. You know, you can spend them to get a certain card that you want. You can also get buildings that help you kind of mitigate some stuff or help you along the way, kind of thing. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about the game. I can jump right into scores if you're ready, unless you have anything else you want to add.
Did it meet or exceed your expectations?
That's what I was going to say. I think that this meets my expectations. I had a decent level of expectation because it is Bruno Cathala. So I love his games typically. It's tile placement, which we enjoy. Johannes Goopy is one that is up and coming, and I think it looks really nice. So I think this meets expectations for me. I would play this at any player count. There's not any player count that I would prefer over the other. I don't necessarily agree that there's a ton of replayability, but I think that's enough to keep me coming back for a little while. And so with all that being said, I'm going to come in at an 8 for this game, Orichalcum.
Okay. For me, I felt like as far as expectations, it did exceed my expectations because I didn't really have much for it. I didn't really know much about it. I knew it was a game that you'd wanted for a while. And I was like, oh, it's like Greek, mythology type of stuff. Like, that's cool.
Right.
But yeah, so it exceeded my expectations. So I'm going to give it, I'm actually going to give it like an 8.5.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So you like this more than I did. I'm kind of surprised by that.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So another really good game from Bruno, and obviously others. But if you're a Bruno fan, if you like a nice family weight game from Pandasaurus, this would be the one I think you should definitely check out.
Yeah.
Pretty quick, only 45 minutes. Yeah, so let us know what you think. What is your favorite Bruno Cathala game? Let us know down in the comments. And we will see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.
Bye.